What on earth is deschooling? It is something you need to know if you are going to homeschool your children. Hi, my name is Cheryl. I'm host of the Homeschool How-To podcast. I never envisioned myself homeschooling, but here I am. I started a podcast 2 years ago interviewing homeschooling families, and since I started learning all about this lifestyle, I quit my government job and started homeschooling the kids because it's just amazing. It's amazing. But you know what? Just like everybody else, I started out with our homeschooling journey looking exactly like the traditional school system. And there was fighting, and there was crying, and there was throwing of some books. I'm not proud of myself for that moment. But you know what? I hadn't de-schooled myself. So I'm here today to tell you all about deschooling. Now, you're probably going to say, all right, Cheryl, you already talked about this in another video, and I heard a little bit about that in a different video, and that's okay because you need to hear it a few times to let it sink in. It took me over 2 years to quit my government job, so I had to hear from 100 homeschooling families before I was like, yeah, I can do this. I got this. This is how we're supposed to be living our life, not in a cubicle or classroom. Shouldn't be doing that. No way to live. Look, it's gorgeous outside right now. It's snowing here in New York. It's going to be a lot of shoveling later, but we've got plows. Yeah, you know, we're not supposed to be in cubicle walls or cement walls in cement buildings that look like prisons. Our kids just shouldn't be spending their childhood there. But we also don't want them learning from textbooks. It's not the best way to learn. And I'm going to tell you how to deschool yourself so that you can just get that mindset right out of your head. You don't want it. We don't want textbooks. We don't want sitting in desks. We don't want Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 learning. And we don't want to raise our hand to go to the bathroom either. Okay, so don't make your kids do that. All right, here's what we do want. We want to read a few books ourselves. That's right. You've got to read a couple of books, mom and dad, okay? And you're going to be happy once you did. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll listen to these on audio, and I believe they are all available on audio, whether it's on YouTube, someone doing a read aloud, but like the author isn't getting the credit, so just buy the book. Or on Libby, the Libby app, you can order audio versions of a lot of books, or Audible, you can get usually like a free 30 days and get a book there on audio. So I love doing that because I've got 2 little kids and I don't have time to read. And you know, if I do sit and open a book, generally close my eyes within 30 seconds, even when I'm reading to my kids. So yeah, audio is the way to go for me. But I have a couple of books that I'm going to recommend to you. One being Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. Now, he has a plethora of other books that I also recommend, like Weapons of Mass Instruction. He's got a few others. They're all fantastic, but I would start with Dumbing Us Down and maybe go back to him. You can also watch videos of talks that he's done, lectures that he's done. He was a New York State teacher that won Teacher of the Year. In that same year, he left teaching and started promoting homeschooling. So the book is just fantastic. It's called Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. The Tuttle twins actually have a book called Education Vacation, which is dedicated to John Taylor Gatto, and it's based off of John Taylor Gatto and about homeschooling. So check that out. Tuttle Twins, I can give you a link and code if you want to check that book out, but it's fantastic. So next book I would recommend is Free to Learn by Peter Gray. The next one would be How Children Learn by John Holt. The next would be The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart. So I'm actually listening to The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart right now. It was recommended to me, I think by a couple different people on my podcast, and I finally got around to it, and it is just so good. It's for that mom that's like, or dad, that is like, okay, but my kid likes video games and TV. What am I gonna do? And just this morning, I took some ideas out of that book. It's Valentine's Day today, so instead of getting my kids candy with all crap in it, I got them a ton of art supplies, and we just set up a table, put all the art supplies on, so they've been busy making messes and having fun all day with that. There's TV on too, occasionally, but you know, it's there and it's fun, and it's where we can see it and use it. So The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart, fantastic read. The next book would be Indoctrinating Our Children to Death by Alex Newman. He was actually on my podcast and we talked about this book. It is insane when you actually look into the history of our education system, and Dumbing Us Down gets into that a little bit as well. But the history of our education system, where it came from, how it hasn't always been this way, how it's completely unnatural to learn with children all the same age. 30 kids that are 7 years old in the classroom, all learning the same thing the exact same way, when they all have different backgrounds, they all have different interests, they all have different home lives, they all have different cognitive abilities, and we're expecting the same thing from every one of them, not only those 30 in the classroom, but all the 7-year-olds in that grade and then across the country. And even in other countries, it's actually insanity. It's not natural to learn that way. And the Indoctrinating Our Children to Death book by Alex Newman really gets into that and how this model came from Prussia, the former Germany. I went to public school, so I had to look that up. And they were just trying to create the obedient workers. They were trying to create good soldiers. And the Rockefellers in the early 1900s said, hey, we want to invest millions of dollars into this education system. And yeah, why would oil tycoons want to invest millions of dollars into something that could create competitors to their business? They're not going to do that. They are going to invest millions creating the General Board of Education to create the obedient worker that's smart enough to do the job, but not smart enough to question it. That was their goal all along, okay? So, this opens our eyes. These books are really going to open your eyes to this. There is also Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. These books are just, obviously you're not going to get through 6 books in a weekend. I don't expect you to, but make a little list and over the next year or two, just have them all on the back burner to read or listen to when you have time, and your eyes will be like wide open after this. You'll be blown away. All right, so the next part of the deschooling process is exploring book lists and free services. So you're going to want to jump into curriculum because you're a good parent and you don't want your child to be left behind, and you don't want them to be not smart, and you don't want them to not get a good job, and you don't want them to be living in your basement for 50 years. I get it, but there is a more beautiful way to learn, and I recommend taking a few months or a year and not doing any formal curriculum. And I know this is really hard, and you're going to have, looks from the grandparents or aunts and uncles, siblings, and, friends saying like, what do you mean you're not even doing a curriculum? You have to report to the school, right? But it's more taking your everyday life and turning that into your curriculum. And you'll see as you go through the courses that, this is more of the unschooling approach. But I think it's so necessary to start out this way and then see how your child learns, what they're interested in, and then pick a curriculum style or a formal curriculum from there. But really just take that time. And it's not, you don't stick them in front of a TV all day. What you would do is find curated book lists. So book lists from people like Read Aloud Revival, Sarah Mackenzie. She's been on my podcast. She has amazing book lists. We've been using her book list for a couple of years now, and I use library apps. So my library, which yours might too, has an app where I can just go on. So right now we're in February. I could do books for March right now. So I could look up books for the end of winter, books for beginning of spring. I could look up books for the month of March. I live in the Northeast, so I could look up books in the Northeast. I could look up books for kids that like trucks. I could look up books for kids that are very rambunctious and won't sit for a long time. She curates these right for you. You can take a little quiz and she'll give you these, or she already has lists that are pre-programmed there for you, and you can copy that into your library's app and have those books ordered right to your library. I get like 30 at a time and just keep them for the month. And, it really has just been what works for us. These are books that I wouldn't have normally picked out before, and, books that my kids probably wouldn't have picked out because they're not always colorful. My son ends up going towards like Pinkalicious. But these are often living books, which means they're books about somebody that actually existed in history, or a time in history, an event in history, but it's put into story so that there's context and your child is actually, learning about history, but through story, and they're going to retain it. So I definitely recommend these books. So you don't have to do a formal curriculum. Just read the books to your kids every day, 15, 20 minutes a day, or longer if you want, but 20 minutes a day reading to them these awesome books. That's good enough. That's part of your deschooling process. And then there are also library apps like the Libby app, Hoopla, Overdrive, and Cloud Library, where you can have your child listen to audiobooks, which is awesome. My son loves listening to the Boxcar Children. He can listen to that right on the Libby app. Spotify even has books that you can play on audio. They also have podcasts that you can play. So these are all great alternatives to the screen. Give your kids some coloring, some crayons, some scissors, some glue, and play an audiobook or a kid's podcast story. And it's a wonderful way to learn. And to throw in the math there, you guys can cook together. You can talk about what time it is. You can talk about time when you're in the car, what time it is, and what time did we leave. And, just integrating learning into your everyday, that is beautiful. And I would recommend just deschooling yourself by doing these things: the book lists, listening to books on audio, and talking about math or things in your everyday life. For instance, if you're outside in nature taking a walk, talk about which way do you think we're heading? North, south, east, west? How can we tell? You have the conversation about it, and the other part of deschooling is getting out in nature together, taking walks, going to parks, all of that is part of deschooling. And it is probably going to be part of your homeschooling process anyways throughout the years, but that is such an important part. So you definitely want to start that in the beginning. And the other part of deschooling is using free resources. And this is just beautiful. You can do science and nature through doing free days like at parks or a nature center. You can observe wildlife, track animal prints, study ecosystems together. You can do hands-on learning if you visit a botanical garden, a farm, a beach, or community garden. You can learn about animals through going to your local pet store or an animal rescue. Even the vet might have, some sort of program they can do with you. You can also learn about species and conservation. You can learn history and social studies through visiting courthouses, city halls, war memorials, and cemeteries. I know the cemetery thing sounds weird, but I did it and it was really cool. There was like a president buried at the cemetery we were at. I had no idea. Right near us. You can do free museum days. They often have homeschooling days at museums. Explore history, factory tours, and archives. I know we have an arsenal near us. I don't know that I'd want to tour that, but probably would be cool to do that. You can do emergency services tours. So go to a fire station or a police station. You can learn all about safety, but you can also learn about safety from my book, Let's Talk Emergencies. So you can go to live performances, watch free outdoor concerts, theater rehearsals, or just go to the local theater. I know in Albany, we have Washington Park has theaters all summer long, usually free too. You can go to library events, join storytelling or craft events, author visits. I know our library even does one with birds of prey where they'll bring in eagles, hawks. It's so cool. We've done it 2 years in a row now. You can do STEM centers or maker spaces. That would be visiting science centers, planetariums, observatories, or even hardware stores. I think Home Depot has a day where they do crafts with your kids. You can also visit TV and radio stations, universities, science expos. You can do engineering and robotics by exploring free STEM workshops at maker spaces. You can do practical math and economics by learning budgeting at the grocery store, thrift shops, or even banks. You can learn about transportation and logistics just by visiting the post office, the train station, or an airport. You can learn about business and bartering by exploring community swap meets, library book sales, farmers markets even are a great place to take your kids. And you can join group activities like volunteering at the shelter, food banks, park cleanups, and then use your homeschooling network. Find co-ops, homeschool meetups, and groups for learning. So these are all awesome free resources and should be part of your deschooling process, but part of your homeschool as you move forward as well. Just realizing that all these are available is part of your deschooling process. Like, this is a different way to learn, and it is so much better than learning from a textbook. All right, so to recap, your deschooling process is going to be reading a few books to help you understand how the education system was created and how children learn best. You are going to utilize book lists that have already been created. Read Aloud Revival is a great place to start. Order those books to come directly to your library and pick up a big bulk for the month. And keep doing that as the months go on. And then utilize the free resources in the world around you. And don't forget to incorporate nature into that. A nature walk does so much. And as your child finds things that actually spark their interest, note it down and use that as part of the curriculum moving forward. It doesn't have to end at, your stop at the post office. You can take out children's books on the post office. You can watch videos or documentaries on how the post office was created or different things that happen throughout the post offices, throughout the year. That's just an example, but it's so easy to grab something that they find interesting and learn all about it. We're just not programmed to think that way, but it's time for us to start. So I hope you found this video useful. Like, subscribe, share, and don't forget to watch the Homeschool How To podcast, or listen. You can do that on audio too. The Homeschool How To podcast, interviews with homeschoolers to hear from all different homeschooling families and how they do it so that you can find the best way for you. Thank you so much for watching.